Mark Carney said he could handle Donald Trump.
Well, so did you.
He is trying to manipulate his way through backroom deals to get that majority.
He's allowed to do this, though, right? Floor crossing is allowed. You've benefited from it in the past.
Rosemary Barton ate Pierre Poilievre for lunch during this interview. No, seriously, he hasn't been seen in hours. I think he's digesting. Pierre Poilievre called out Mark Carney for bribing Conservative MPs to cross the floor over to the Liberals. And Rosemary Barton just can't help but shamelessly justify it. Now, I've been making videos over the past week or so highlighting the outright media bias and their collective attempt to frame this entire narrative as a weakness within Pierre Poilievre as opposed to how disloyal and corrupt the Liberal Party is, and embarrasses the Liberals and Mark Carney during this interview. Pierre manages to completely decimate Michael Maw and Mark Carney by highlighting how backroom deals are undermining the Canadian people. And though it's bittersweet, given the circumstances, it really hits home when he wraps it up all in a nice bow for us. Make sure you leave a big, fat, enormous, gigantic, large like on the video so I can keep exposing these moronic, biased media clowns. If you love my content, and if I'm saying what you're thinking, consider subscribing and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss new uploads. Alright, let's dive into the abyss known as Rosemary Barton.
I want to start with what happened in Australia overnight. At least 11 people killed at a Hanukkah event on Bondi Beach, and just for your thoughts on that, sir.
Well, our condolences for the families. This is another act of anti-Semitic evil and terrorism that have become all too common. This is what happens when we allow hate, terrorism, anti-Semitism to be normalized. We in Canada have to reflect on the fact that there have been rampaging anti-Semitic riots on our streets, fire bombings of children's schools and of Jewish synagogues. It is absolutely unacceptable. We must destroy this terrorism, stand up against anti-Semitism, and make Canada and hopefully the world a safe place for people to wear their mezuzahs, to put their mezuzahs on their doors, to wear their Stars of David and their kippahs, and to be proud Jews. So I'm thinking of all of my Jewish friends and neighbors this Hanukkah.
Okay, move on to some politics now, and I want to talk politics and a bit of policy as well. Right. But let's start with what happened.
Holy shit, Rosie. Can you not muster up enough compassion to at least acknowledge during this conversation with Pierre how abhorrent this terror attack is?
Yeah. Let's move on. All this Jew talk is getting me hungry. All right, more about why you're a complete failure.
Last week, you've now lost 2 MPs to the Liberal Party. Both have pointed to your leadership as issues. Michael Maw saying that he was more interested in unity than division. Is this a problem of your leadership at this point?
No, it's a problem of Mark Carney's leadership that after Canadians clearly rejected a costly Liberal majority because they knew it would mean higher grocery prices and higher food costs. He is trying to manipulate his way through backroom deals to get that majority.
He's allowed to do this, though, right? Floor crossing is allowed.
Floor crossing is allowed? Jeez, woman. Would you let the man speak? Just when Pierre is about to make a good point, Rosemary steers the conversation into correlating how Conservatives have benefited from Liberals leaving their party to cross floors. It's very subtle because she stays on topic, but she's attempting to pivot the attention away from Carney and his corrupt Liberal Party.
You've benefited from it.
But he's trying to take a majority, a costly majority, that would drive up the cost of living and enrich Liberal elites, of course, but not through democratic means. My message to Mark Carney is that if you want a costly majority government to drive up taxes and deficits, then you have to go to the Canadian people and have them vote for it, not do it by dirty backroom deals.
I mean, I know you don't like it, and we can talk about the merits of floor crossing and whether it should be allowed, but it is allowed. This is something that is allowed to happen. So back to my question.
Never in the history of Canadian politics has a minority government gained majority status simply by defection. We're in unprecedented territory, and if this were the Conservatives, Rosie and her propagandist Liberal cohorts would be shouting about how Pierre is stealing from the Canadian people. They'd be working round-the-clock hours to get to the bottom of what's going on. Investigative reporters, undercover journalists, the whole 9 yards, all on our tax dollars.
Is this a sign of a weakness in your leadership that 2 members of your caucus have left?
No, it's a sign of backroom dealings that will drive up the cost of living. And don't take my word for it, take Mr. Maw's word. This is what he said just a few weeks ago. We are in a shameful situation in this country where over 2 million Canadians are visiting food banks every month. At the end of every month, paychecks are not going far enough. Why is that? I'm quoting,
Yeah.
the Liberals want to deflect and blame this solely on the trade deficit. However, there's a simple economic fact. When we create more units of currency and map them into the economy that is not meaningfully producing more goods
Yeah.
and services, we get inflation. As a case in point, in
I
the
would
last
ask
5
Mr.
years, I'll just
Poilievre,
finish
though.
up his
Yes,
quote.
yeah.
What an insufferable, miserable, conniving troll Rosie is. Let the man speak. Why do you keep interrupting Pierre? Is the truth too uncomfortable for the CBC? Did you get a memo on your desk this morning that said, stop Pierre when he mentions Carney and Michael Ma? They don't like that Pierre Poilievre is pointing out the personality traits of the new Liberal member that they're getting. Pierre is rightfully characterizing, through Michael Ma's own words, I might add, what he thinks of the party he just joined. Literally, right after making this statement.
In the last 5 years, grocery prices have risen more than 20%. He blames that on Mark Carney's deficit,
Yep.
and that was only a few weeks ago. So
It's possible he didn't
really,
write that, though, as we know. Many of
Well,
your
he spoke
MPs,
it.
many of
he
your
spoke
MPs are
it.
given talking.
They were his words.
Are you fucking kidding me? It's possible that he didn't write those words. You are by far and wide the saddest excuse for a journalist, Rosie. You would be better suited for The View. You'd fit right in with a bunch of chuckling hens who scream how much they hate white straight men. Well, men who don't have a slit between their legs where their manhood used to be.
What
They were his words.
Okay, so
and
what
you know what? He was right in that when he said that, and it was, but he.
What are you doing now? What are you doing now to make sure other caucus members don't leave? What are you saying to them?
Affordability, affordability, affordability. Canadians cannot afford grocery prices because of Carney's hidden Liberal taxes on food. What unites all Conservatives is the belief that you should be able to have a full bank account, a full fridge, and a full stomach all at the same time, something that's not possible.
And it's also not possible for Rosie to have a full stomach. When she looks deep inside herself, it's an endless void with remnants of cream pies, cookie crumbs, ketchup, chips, and gravy.
After 10
And
years
listen,
of
we were
Liberals.
talking to Minister Champagne about that, and a gentleman who's using a food bank, because you're right, they are at record highs. But obviously there are some people who believe that Mark Carney has the solutions to those problems.
Well, he is the one who's causing the problems. He's bringing in an industrial carbon tax on farm equipment and on fertilizer that drives up food prices, a food packaging tax that adds about $1 billion to grocery bills across the country, a new fuel tax that will be 7 cents a liter next year on farmers, on truckers who bring us our food. And then, of course, there's a $78 billion deficit, twice the size of Trudeau's, which is causing inflation, as Mr. Ma rightly pointed out. And I'm the only one who's going to reverse that inflationary policy. I've been saying this now for 5 years, and I regrettably continually proven right that when you spend more and tax more, then Canadians have to pay more for groceries after 10 Liberal years.
Let's talk a bit about policy, because that's obviously where you want to go to.
Why not?
The Memorandum of Understanding with Alberta. The overall goal of that deal is to get a pipeline, at least one pipeline to the British Columbia coast to get more oil to Asian markets. Do you think that the fundamentals behind that deal are a good idea? That itself is a good idea?
A pipeline to the Pacific?
Well, that part of the deal that the Prime Minister has put on the table with the Alberta Premier makes sense.
Yes, obviously. That's why I put forward a motion in favor of that pipeline. But Mark Carney doesn't think it's a good idea. He voted against his own promised pipeline.
Well, he did that because it didn't have the industrial carbon price in it, as you know.
You make a very good point.
Yes.
Mark
If you
Carney,
had put the whole...
Oops. I don't think you were supposed to say that, Rosie. Kind of put your foot in your mouth, didn't you? Well, I guess you shouldn't have skipped breakfast. She was so hell-bent on refuting his point that she accidentally slipped up and spilled the beans on the industrial carbon tax, which she later mopped up with her lips. Watch how quickly she tries to keep talking over Pierre to avoid this obvious blunder.
Did that because it didn't have the industrial carbon price in it, as you know.
You make a very good point.
Yes.
Mark
If you
Carney,
had put the whole MOU on the table to vote against, it probably would have worked out better for you in that instance.
But then I would be voting for a costly carbon tax, as you point out, a tax on food, because when you tax the farm equipment and fertilizer, you tax the food. A tax on homes, because when you tax cement, glass, concrete, wood, and other things.
But the Premier of Alberta is comfortable with industrial carbon pricing.
If I could, you asked me why I didn't put it in, because I am against carbon taxes, period. Now, let's talk about the amazing and brilliant Premier of Alberta, who said just the other day when she was endorsing my leadership that I would not have forced a carbon tax on her. And if I were Prime Minister right now, we'd be well on the way to planning a pipeline, something that is not happening under the current Liberal government. Now, let's be clear about Mark Carney. He is a counterfeit. He's pretending to adopt my policies because he knows they're popular, but he's quietly working against them. He's told his Liberal caucus...
You don't believe that he actually wants a pipeline? Because the Alberta Premier believes that.
I do believe what he voted against, which was the pipeline. And Mark, let's take a look at the history here. What you have to believe to trust Mark Carney on this. His party killed this pipeline in a November of 2016 cabinet decision. Mark Carney endorsed that decision to kill the pipeline. I don't believe that Mark Carney has changed from the things that he wrote for 10 years and that his party did for 10 years, which is to block pipelines and try to keep oil and gas in the ground.
Then why does Danielle Smith believe him?
Danielle Smith was very clever because she forced Carney to flip-flop and break his word to his Leave It in the Ground caucus by withdrawing his threatened emissions cap and clean electricity regulations, because those things would have driven up the cost of energy and killed even more jobs. Now, Ms. Smith defended her province by forcing Carney to flip-flop on that. But that, at the end of the day, does not mean that we should give him credit. He was threatening to do a lot of damage. Now he's doing a little less damage. Why doesn't he just get out of the way? We know what it takes to get a pipeline done. The federal government has the sole legal authority to approve it. Yeah. So approve it. Okay. So set the corridor,
But I should make a compare and contrast between how this gremlin interviews Carney versus how she interviews Pierre. Now, journalists should ask questions to politicians and push the boundaries. I'm not against that. But let the man speak, for God's sakes. Can he get a word in? Oh, man. Typical Liberal women, eh? If Pierre were the one interrupting Rosie like this, her next Sunday's special would be all about toxic masculinity. Anytime Pierre starts to make sense, Rosie stops him immediately. You wouldn't want your Liberal viewers developing some common sense now, would you, CBC? And also, what Rosemary is doing here is trying to get Pierre to admit that he doesn't agree with the MOU in order to paint a narrative that him and Danielle Smith aren't on good terms. He masterfully pivoted this lame attempt to show how incompetent Carney is.
And the private sector will build it because it's wildly profitable.
You referenced Northern Gateway, and you know that the problems there, yes, it was a cabinet decision, but the problem is British Columbia and First Nations. No. So what would you do to try and get their support for a pipeline? Or would you just say, too bad, we're doing it?
We're doing it.
Oh. So you wouldn't bother with consultation?
Of course I would consult. Yeah. That's what my motion said. Yeah. We do consultations, but we are going to build a pipeline when I'm Prime Minister. As for British Columbia, the Premier does not have a veto. No. Under our Constitution, Section 92, it is the exclusive domain of the federal government, and under Bill C-5, which Mark Carney asked for, it is the exclusive decision of the Prime Minister. So there's only one person who will decide on this in the end, and that is the Prime Minister of Canada. Mark Carney is quietly whispering to the Leave It in the Ground Liberal caucus, there will never be a pipeline, don't worry.
He must not be saying that because Stephen Guilbeault quit.
Stephen Guilbeault quit because of the emissions cap, but he is saying it, and his own MPs in British Columbia are saying it. And then he voted against a pipeline in the House of Commons. What he's doing, let's be clear, pipelines are popular and profitable. So he's pretending that he's open to one until after the next election so that he can try to win pro-pipeline voters. But then his plan is to kill the project. If you want a pipeline to the Pacific, to add $30 billion of overseas exports, the biggest export project overseas in Canadian history, you will need a conservative government that will get out of the way and let it happen.
Very well said by Pierre. I know there are many people doubting his leadership for some stupid reason, but that's an emotional reaction to what the Liberals are doing to sabotage him. Don't let the Liberals change your perception of Pierre, because he's saying the same thing that he's been saying for years. It's just sad that what he's saying is not only still relevant, but even more so now than ever. Liberal viewers don't understand that Mark Carney is a huge climate activist and WEF puppet. All this while he's pretending to be a pro-pipeline prime minister. It goes against every ethical bone in his body. This is well known by people who choose to look outside the liberal hive mind called CBC.
Okay, I want to ask you about trade, because that's the other piece that is coming in the new year. There's still no deal. Talks are still stalled, although the Prime Minister speaks to the President. Do you think that the CUSMA review is now the best way forward for Canada in getting any kind of deal with the United States?
My position is that we need tariff-free access to the biggest and most lucrative market in the world, which we had before the Liberal government was elected in 2015. Of course, after the Liberals got in, President Obama started hammering us with new tariffs on softwood lumber that Harper had got lifted. They brought in new Buy America rules, and then it's been one defeat after another. Now,
So
Mark
what would you
Carney
do? What do you think they should be doing here?
Why did you even invite Pierre on the show if you weren't going to let him talk? If he says something that makes sense, you cut him off every single time. What? You don't like the fact that these problems were caused by liberals? You don't like that Canadians have been bent over and in the ass consistently since Trudeau was elected? Sorry, Rosie O'Donnell's sister, this is a problem that voters like you created. Take ownership for your actions for once.
We should reflect on the fact that Mark Carney was elected on one promise, that he would negotiate a win with President Trump by July 21st. And here we are, about a half a year later, his promise is broken. American tariffs have doubled. They've tripled on softwood lumber.
But some of that is because of the president. So I'm genuinely curious. What would you do in dealing with Donald Trump?
I will answer that question, but let's be clear.
Yeah.
Mark Carney said he could handle Donald Trump.
Well, so did you.
And so did you. Well, duh, you crazy liberal cupcake. Pierre isn't the PM, so the only reference point that we have is Mark Carney. Guys, if you made it this far into the interview and your brain hurts, think about how I feel watching this shit daily. And for that, I think that at least I earn a like on the video.
So, and I would have if I were Prime Minister right now.
So what should he be doing?
Well, we have to negotiate from a position of strength.
Yeah.
And I have to go back. We need to approve pipelines and natural gas projects and other major resource projects that allow us to ship our single biggest export overseas, so that we are not monolithically dependent on the Americans. We need to get rid of the capital gains tax on reinvestments in Canada to bring back the $500 billion of investment Liberals have driven into the U.S. economy. And then you can sit down with the president and say, look, now we're selling our resources to the Asians, to the Europeans. Now we're bringing back our investment and becoming more sovereign, strong, and self-reliant. Now we're in a position of strength. Now let's negotiate. And that would be a far better approach than what Mr. Carney's doing, which is blocking these projects, keeping all of the liberal taxes and anti-resource project laws in place of the last 10 years, and giving even more of our investment to the Americans.
Of course, having a conservative in government would make Donald Trump want to make a deal with Canada. If Canada's economy is strong, by utilizing our natural resources, that creates a competitive market where our country holds more global buying power. Trump wants to be a part of a profitable country, not a poor one with a weak leader. He either wants a rich leader to work with or a weak, incompetent one to take advantage of. The latter is Mark Carney. We haven't had the chance to see what it would look like for Pierre to work with Trump. So for Rosie to sit up there and be like, well, do you think that you could do a better job? Yes, Rosie. The answer is yes.
It's been a long year. I think we can both agree on that. A long, busy political year. Did you take any lessons from this past year, either in the election defeat, in your defeat in your own riding? Is there anything you're reflecting on in terms of what you should be doing differently, better, your leadership style, how you speak to Canadians?
Of course Rosie would ask a question like this. She's framed the exact same question to Pierre so many different ways in this interview that it's pathetic. Anything to twist the story into how Pierre is incompetent. But Pierre's answer here is probably the most relatable point that I've ever heard him speak, and this part really hits home.
I reflect a lot on why I'm doing this. Why am I in this? And it's the elderly woman who said to me that going shopping used to be her favorite thing to do every week. Now she walks down a grocery aisle and she feels anxious and angry because of how much it costs to fill her fridge, that she gets home and she's stressed out because she cannot afford to eat. I think of the young guy I met who wants to start a family. He's in his 30s. He's been working his whole adult life and he can't afford a down payment. I am in it for these people. And I need to give them hope. That's what this country needs now more than ever. Hope that you will again be able to afford a home. Hope that you can afford food. Hope that you'll be safe on your streets. And that will be the obsession of my leadership, to provide hope for a better future.
And that's the why, and super important, obviously, but it's the how I'm asking about, whether you think that you are doing the how the right way.
Well, on the how side, so let's break it down. On food, the how is we got to get rid of the industrial carbon tax on food.
I don't mean the policies. I mean you as a leader, whether you feel you're doing that part the right way to connect with those people and talk about what you think are the right solutions.
Yeah, the right solutions, it's not just the industrial carbon tax, though we have to. The underlying problem with inflation is that they're printing money. And whenever you print money, then you bid up the goods that Canadians buy. And it enriches a small group of liberal elite corporate insiders because all their assets go up. But then the working class people who actually carry this country on their shoulders, they get ripped off. And so we need to stop the money printing, get our budget back into balance, cut the bureaucracy, consultants, corporate welfare, foreign aid, handouts to phony refugees, cut that all off, because then you can bring down the deficits, the inflation, and the taxes, and then that young person I met will be able to afford a down payment, and that wonderful grandmother will be able to once again enjoy her visit to the grocery store because she can afford groceries.
How any single person in this country can look at Pierre Poilievre and see anything less than a leader who is going to have our backs is totally stupid. And that point about going to the grocery store, man, how many of us dread going there now? It reminds me of the books I've read about Soviet communist Russia and how disappointed and defeated everyone looks in society. I don't see happy faces anymore in Canada. It feels bland, gloomy, unrecognizable, and depressing. Pierre represents a light at the end of the tunnel, and unfortunately, corrupt liberals are leaving nothing but rubble all the way to the end. But we have to keep walking with our heads high. Don't get discouraged and forget who our leader is. It's this man right here. I have full faith in my heart and soul that he will be our next prime minister. And that's what I'm holding on to. And I'll keep working every day to make sure people see where his heart lies. And that's firmly on Canadian soil, standing shoulder to shoulder with people like you and me.